Today on Investigate TV Plus Weekend, service members barred from suing the government for medical mistakes at military hospitals.
Did you have any idea at all that you could not sue the government?
No, I had no idea.
Plus, mid-break-in, one man finds out about security alarm red tape.
I realized then there's somebody in my house. Hey, man, I need help. Call police. And then he says, what's your password?
What you need to check on for your home security system before an emergency. Investigate TV Plus Weekend starts right now. Hello and welcome to Investigate TV Plus Weekend. I'm Lee Zurich. If you or your family were victims of medical malpractice, you'd be able to seek damages in court. That's not the case for active duty members of the military across the nation, but there are pushes for change. Reporter Josie Sturman looks at the effort to help service members seek justice.
It means a lot. It means that I worked hard for this.
When Ryan Carter was given this gold challenge coin after surviving basic training, he had no idea what serving his country would cost him and his family.
Very few get this coin, and you earn this coin.
Since graduation, he's earned way more than a token of respect. Carter gave more than a decade of service to the Air National Guard, including working on giant cargo planes big enough to carry tanks and troops into the air. But what happened in a Maryland military hospital in 2018 grounded him for life.
And the surgeon comes in, pulls me into a private room, and doesn't explain what happened, but just said something went wrong, and he's paralyzed.
A lot of therapy goes into that maneuver.
Ryan, a former staff sergeant, is now confined to a wheelchair, unable to use his legs after elective spine surgery to deal with chronic pain in his neck. He was paralyzed at Walter Reed, the military's premier hospital, when the procedure went tragically wrong.
It's like someone just, went in and cut my nerves and just said, good luck.
Attorney filings claim military doctors were negligent during Ryan's surgery, listing 22 specific failures from anesthesia to aftercare, breaching the standard of care, leaving him with a spinal cord injury that had him hospitalized for weeks, in rehabilitation away from home for years, and in need of 24-hour care for life, with his wife Casey acting as his caretaker and steadfast cheerleader, even when the weight of it all feels like too much to carry.
That's probably the toughest for me is
Seeing me going through a lot of pain.
when he's in that much pain, there's nothing I can do but him crying because he's in so much pain. Yeah. And the moments, and I'm sorry, but the moments when he says, I don't think I can live like this much longer, it's too painful.
It's pain amplified by injustice that only applies to those in uniform. If Ryan was a civilian, he could fight in court for damages, alleging medical mistakes and taking his case to a judge and jury. But active duty service members can't sue the government for malpractice.
The courthouse doors are closed to military service members seeking justice and accountability.
Chris Cassiano, Carter's attorney, is trying to change that. He's fighting something called the Ferris Doctrine, a decades-old court decision that effectively bans service members from filing malpractice lawsuits. Years ago, Congress tried a workaround, passing legislation that allows active-duty military to file malpractice claims. But that process is secretive, handled behind closed doors by the military itself, and without usual legal tools like witness testimony and discovery. The system has been plagued by denials and lengthy delays. Ryan Carter's claim has been sitting in limbo for 4 years.
We want accountability. We want justice. We want the ability to get answers to the questions that we have.
To get it all, Cassiano is now climbing the legal mountaintop, petitioning the Supreme Court to hear Ryan's case. More than 20 organizations representing military causes have filed briefs in support, along with several members of Congress. When you think about the gravity of that, how do you feel about being the face of a case that you're trying to ask the highest court in the land to weigh in on what happened to you?
this is the position that the Lord put me into, and this is the position where this is, to me, my new mission.
We're doing what we're doing, not just for us, but for the bigger picture, for all the other service members that have come before them, that will come after them, right? And it deters, right, future bad actors, so that someone's going to think twice before, they rush into a procedure, or they don't get a good night's sleep, or they're trying to do something, cut a corner, because they know they're deterred from doing that because they know that there's ramifications for their actions.
The consequences of military medical mistakes and misconduct, if any, are currently kept confidential. Our national investigative team has spent years trying to crack the veil of secrecy that keeps service members and their families in the dark about actions taken against problem providers, even in cases involving injuries or deaths. Right now, when serious disciplinary action is taken by the military, it's reported to a confidential government data bank that tracks things like license suspensions and malpractice payments. But service members, their families, and the public can't see who's been reported. And the military won't tell us either, despite numerous information requests and the threat of legal action from our team.
I think everybody deserves that information, that transparency, so that they can make an informed decision about their own health care.
Earlier this year, we got some information, basic data from the Defense Health Agency, which oversees health care for members of the military and their families. It gave us an overview about discipline involving military providers in general, showing hundreds of reports to the data bank. We continue battling the DHA for more information. But in the meantime, our team tried a new approach, requesting specifics about the kinds of military providers reported to the databank directly from the databank itself.
What we obtained shows more than 200 military doctors, nearly 170 nurses, and almost 400 other medical professionals like physicians' assistants and dentists have been reported for disciplinary action since 2018. In that same time frame, nearly 300 military providers were reported for malpractice payments.
What does that say about the quality of military health care for spending that much money and reporting that many people?
This is obviously a big problem. It's a bigger problem than the attention that it's gotten in the news. These are people who are serving the country, but they've been wronged, and they deserve better than they're getting now.
Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro is trying another avenue to make things right for active duty service members. As the Carters lobby the Supreme Court, he's lobbying Congress, fighting for the HERO Act, which would allow active duty military to file lawsuits for malpractice, saying the current claims process is broken.
And so what we're trying to do with the HERO Act is pretty simple. We're trying to give military members the same rights that civilians have.
Rights including access to information about medical providers that civilians routinely get from lawsuit filings and disciplinary actions made public by state boards across the nation.
Are you surprised by the lack of transparency for these people and their families who are willing to put their lives on the line for us?
I'm surprised that our government would treat our military members this way, that there would be this level of secrecy, that there would be non-transparency. There really is no reason for that. Now, don't get me wrong. These are also military members who are generally honorable people who are often trying their best. But I'm uncomfortable with a situation where if a medical professional knows that there is basically no chance that there's going to be any consequences if they mess up, if they don't pay particular attention to a procedure that they're carrying out, there is a bad incentive for them then not to take the care that they should.
Care that can end up costing service members their lives, even their quality of life. It's a price paid by Ryan Carter and his wife, Casey.
Sometimes I feel guilty. I talk to a therapist for that once a week.
Feel like a burden?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes it is a big burden.
A burden that may turn out to be a blessing to other members of the military as Ryan continues his service to country, battling through his recovery and the courts.
The primary surgeon involved in Ryan Carter's procedure has no disciplinary action listed on their public state medical board record, but we have no way of knowing if they have been reported to the confidential data bank. That physician still has hospital privileges at Walter Reed. The DHA was contacted for comment about the HERO Act and the Carter case, but offered no comment. Coming up after the break, we investigate evictions turning deadly and examine solutions from experts. Eviction is a stressful and dire possibility faced by millions of Americans, but our investigation reveals that stress can also turn to violence. People have even been killed during evictions. Kristen Crowley looks at the rare but growing problem and how experts say it can be addressed.
Dispatch requesting assistance.
It's February 29th. 2024.
Suspect is still in the residence.
The emergency
They have an officer down.
is dire.
We now have 2 officers down.
Police flood the front yard of a home just outside Kansas City, Missouri.
2 officers shot.
I need at least 4 ambulances.
The call brings emergency crews from across the region to help.
Be ready to take your patients. Be advised this is still an active scene. PD still taking fires.
But help is too late.
Giving you another live look. This is the beginning of this procession.
2 people died that day. Independence, Missouri officer Cody Allen.
I was like, why? Why?
And Carmen Mack's big brother, Drexel Mack.
This is not fair. This is not fair. My brother should still be here. He should have not got killed doing his job.
Drexel wasn't law enforcement. The job that got him killed was serving an eviction notice. The man being evicted, Larry Acree, is now charged in the double murder. Mack was a civil process server for years, tasked with serving papers like eviction notices for people who fell too far behind on payments. Work that isn't considered inherently dangerous. But Carmen says she constantly worried for his safety.
Was your brother ever scared?
Yeah, a lot. People are very crazy, and people you come to take their stuff from them is how they feel. So they try to protect their belongings.
At that moment of eviction, everyone is tense. It can escalate very quickly.
And eviction expert Carl Gershenson says examples of violent evictions are popping up across the country.
Here's a notice to evict, okay?
What?
It's your notice put the knife down right now.
We found, quite a large number of these stories being reported each year, whether that be, a tenant committing violence against a landlord violence on the tenant.
Gershenson is the director of Princeton University's Eviction Lab, a group that formed because he says no one was tracking the rate of evictions in the U.S. The number it determined is about 3.6 million a year.
What about violence with evictions? Is that being tracked?
No one is tracking the co-occurrence of violence in evictions.
Eviction Lab is trying to do that, but without a nationwide reporting system. It relies on news reports.
Deputies were serving a civil eviction.
And says the numbers may actually be higher. In 2022, it documented at least 38 deaths. By 2023, the number was 44. And that's not including other types of violence that people survived.
We had 2 women shot, one of them shot in the head.
Philadelphia City Council member Jamie Gauthier says over the course of 4 months, the city saw 3 eviction-related shootings. Everyone survived, but Gauthier says Philadelphia needed to take an unprecedented step.
To me, just completely unacceptable, and so much so that we needed to pause until we got things more in order.
Gauthier wants to see even more change down the road and reduce evictions altogether. But nationwide, that's becoming a tall task.
We're seeing evictions reaching the exact same levels that they were before the pandemic in most cities, but in some places, evictions are higher than they've ever been.
That includes cities like Miami, Las Vegas, Houston, and Phoenix. But Gershenson says rural areas and small communities are also feeling the squeeze.
The rate of eviction just continues to rise,
as housing affordability becomes more of a crisis.
Jim McDonald with the United Way of Greater Kansas City says it's important to note a majority of evictions are not deadly or violent. But if evictions increase, so do the chances for more cases of violence. McDonald says the solution to that is having more resources to keep people in their homes. One policy is having great success in the Kansas City area, where a local ordinance gives tenants a right to an attorney when they're facing eviction. Those attorneys often negotiate deals or payment plans with the landlords.
And since that policy was enacted, the majority of households who had a lawyer by their side have been able to avoid evictions.
Some of those attorneys rely on federal emergency rental assistance, funding that came as a result of the pandemic. Funding that by the end of 2024 is expected to run out.
We're going to turn over every stone to find the resources needed to continue this initiative at some level.
Worst case scenario, this funding runs out and you don't find the replacement funding. What happens?
More families will be vulnerable and at risk of losing their housing.
Just weeks after Drexel was shot.
Live at 5, shots fired while a process server approached a house this afternoon.
Another Kansas City area eviction-related shooting.
It's just too much.
Carmen says she can't make sense of any violence, but she hopes change comes with evictions and safety becomes a priority, even if it's too late for her brother. But she'd rather not think about how he died.
He always had you cracking up, laughing.
She'd rather remember how he lived.
A helping hand, a shoulder to cry on, shoulder to lean on. Very respectable, loving man. That's what he was. And still is in my heart today.
If you're struggling to pay rent, one resource is the United Way. You can call 211 and ask for help. Coming up after the break, a home security company told this man they couldn't help him during a break-in. If your home security system goes off in the middle of the night and there's someone actively breaking in, you expect your security company to call for help, but it might not always happen. Here's Mary King in Charlotte.
Everyone's in the house asleep. The alarm goes off saying basement door open.
George Allen says it was just after 1 a.m. on Tuesday, April 16th.
I get up, put on my pants, grab my weapon, slip on my shoes. By that time, Brink's Home Security is calling me.
Allen says he then made his way out the front door.
Heart racing, hoping that it's the wind just blown the door open.
And the agent on the phone asked him if he wanted police to respond.
And I'm telling him, don't call yet. Let me check to make sure because I left the door open.
But Allen says when he got to the door, it was locked.
I realized then there's somebody in my house. Hey, man, I need help. Call police. And then he says, what's your password? You called me. I couldn't think of my password. And so I finally think of it. I give it to him. And then he says, you have to dial 911 yourself because your permit is not valid.
Allen is referring to an alarm system permit. Charlotte and Mecklenburg County require residents to have one in an effort to cut down on false calls for police. In that moment, Allen says he didn't question the agent.
I'm perplexed. And so I step back, I hang up from him, and I dial 911.
While police were on the way, Allen says a woman stepped out of his basement with some of his things in her hands.
And immediately I said, get on the ground, get on the ground. She gets on the ground, and I make her dump everything out of her purse. I make her put everything down.
Allen says his wife stayed on the phone with dispatchers until police arrived to help. Only later could they start to process what happened. Allen says after several calls, a Brinks Home supervisor told him his alarm permit was not valid. But when Allen checked with Charlotte Alarm Management, he says he confirmed his permit was valid.
We have a serious problem because what I pay you for, you didn't come to my aid.
3 weeks after the ordeal, Brinks Home Security credited Mr. Allen 6 months of free monitoring, something he'd not agreed to because he felt more should be done. When we reached out, a Brinks Home spokesperson shared with WBTV they deeply regretted the incident and were working with Mr. Allen, adding in part, quote, The Brinks Home customer service and technical teams have since taken action to address the extremely rare systems issue that delayed our ability to dispatch law enforcement to Mr. Allen's home. The issue is now fully resolved and will not impact Mr. Allen's service in the future, end quote. After our questions, Brinks Home also agreed to refund the money Allen had paid for monitoring the last 4 years and give him free monitoring for the next year, too. Allen says he's grateful for the apology, but also hopes his story encourages all homeowners to check their alarm permit policies and local ordinances.
I want the people of Mecklenburg County to know that you have a responsibility to make sure all of your ducks are in order. You have a responsibility, your alarm system has a responsibility.
Many cities across the country require registration or a permit for an alarm system. That process is free in some places, while others require payment. Your best bet to find out? Call your city hall. Coming up, we've got some ways to invest in yourself that don't have to involve spending any money. When you hear the word investing, your mind likely goes right to the stock market. But consumer investigator Rachel DePompa explains there's more than one way to invest in this week's Watching Your Wallet.
Investing doesn't always mean 401ks and IRAs when it comes to your finances. Sometimes it's the journey. Kiani Epps is a financial educator with the popular website and YouTube channel, The Responsible Homegirl. She says the stock market is a great investment vehicle, but it's just one of many ways to invest in yourself that could benefit you in the long run.
There are so many ways to invest. So that book that you bought from Barnes & Nobles or Amazon, that is an investment into yourself if it is helping you get, more closer to the person that you want to be.
That book, that course you saw online, that financial podcast you want to start listening to on the way to work, that Roth IRA you wanted to learn more about and open, it's all getting you closer to your goals.
Because when we put seed in the ground, it stretches far beyond what we can ever imagine. So list your income, list your expenses, and then ask yourself 4 questions. What am I saving, spending, investing, and giving this pay period?
Epps is a firm believer in not just making a budget and looking at it once a month. She wants you to budget every single time you get a paycheck, so you can stay on top of where your money is going, how much you are saving, and how much you are investing.
And that's it for us. Thanks for joining us here on Investigate TV Plus Weekend. Hope to see you next week.